paint without sanding? And if so, which type of paint will work on which surfaces? Hi guys, my name is Belle and welcome back to Hampton, your house. I know times are super rough all over the world right now, and most people, like us, are staying at home and doing their social distancing. I just wanted to say I hope you and your family are well, and I hope that my channel can bring some joy and help keep your mind off things for a while. Now I get lots of questions about painting and which type of paints you can use for which surfaces, and can you paint furniture without sanding? So I thought I would test out a few options so we can all see what works and what doesn't. I'm actually going to do a second test at the end too, to try and make this as comprehensive as possible, so make sure you watch all the way to the end for that one. But first, my channel is all about bringing the coastal Hamptons vibe to your house, one DIY project at a time. So if that sounds like fun to you, I would love to have you subscribe to my channel by clicking the red button and the notification bell below. Here's the plan. No sanding, test with primer and without, test normal Dulux paint and chalk paint, test laminate, IKEA furniture, fresh wood and previously painted wood. Here are the 4 surfaces I'm going to test today. A laminate chest of drawers, an IKEA lac side table, which sadly lost one leg when my boys were playing one day, a piece of fresh unpainted wood, and a small footstool that has been previously painted with a glossy dark stain. First, I need to wipe all the surfaces clean with a damp cloth and let them dry. So here goes. For the sake of this test, I'm not sanding anything, but I'm applying a plastic spray primer to 2 sections of the laminate and the IKEA table, and a white water-based primer sealer undercoat to 2 sections of the wood surfaces. I left those to dry as per instructions, and now I'm going to start with the chalk paint, both on a section with primer and a section without. As you can see, the consistency of the chalk paint is very thick. Right now I'm painting the side with the plastic spray primer. And this is the side with no prep at all. So far this paint seems to give very good coverage. Here goes chalk paint on the IKEA lac table, first on the side with primer, then on the side without. Here's the plain wood. On this, the chalk paint went on so much more smoothly with the primer and didn't seem to soak in as much. So it seems if you're trying to conserve your chalk paint, I think it would be a good idea to use primer or undercoat with fresh unpainted wood. And I'm just putting the chalk paint on the footstool, on the primer side, and then straight onto the previous glossy paint with no prep work. Now I'm going to do the normal white Dulux enamel. With this normal paint, I'm getting a slightly streakier finish than I was expecting, but I'm pretty sure it's because this paintbrush isn't quite as good as my other one, so it's a good lesson to make sure you get a really high quality paintbrush. You'll definitely see the difference if you do. Now it's back to the beginning again for a second coat of paint on everything. I've decided to put this light satin varnish on half of each chalk paint test area because another question I often see is, do you need a top coat for chalk paint? The Dulux paint doesn't require a top coat, but you could always put one on if you wanted to. So now that we've finished all the coats and they're dry, it's time to test each surface with some everyday items to see how well they hold up. Starting with the Laminate chest of drawers, chalk paint with primer and gloss top coat passed the fingernail scratch test, but without the top coat, I scratched some paint off. Both sides did okay with the Lego Man test. Keys made a few light surface marks, but when I dropped a metal milk jug on it, both sides got chipped. On the chalk paint with no prep side, my fingernail instantly scratched the chalk paint with no top coat, but on the section with the gloss top coat, it survived fingernails and Lego Man, but chipped when I dropped the keys onto it. So the side with primer and top coat is the winner. Both sides of the normal Dulux paint survived the fingernail test, and the Lego Man didn't chip any paint, but he did leave a few blue marks on the surface. The keys didn't chip the paint on either side, they just left surface marks, but the metal jug drop made a big chip in the side without primer and a small chip on the side with primer. Now moving on to the IKEA lac side table. The first thing to strike out here was the chalk paint with no prep and no top coat to the fingernail test, followed shortly by the chalk paint with primer and no top coat to the Lego Man test, as did the sample without prep and with top coat. Surprisingly, the chalk paint with primer and top coat did very well with both the key test and the jug test. Only some slight surface scuffs, but no chips. With the normal white paint, the side without primer fell to the Lego Man, and the side with primer got a few surface scuffs from the keys, and the paint chipped with the metal jug. The fresh unpainted wood did very well with all test areas, just a few surface scuffs and the paint didn't chip at all. But the Lego Man, the keys and the jug all dented the wood quite a lot, so that's something to watch out for. And the previously painted wooden footstool survived the fingernails and the Lego man, but the paint chipped in all test areas when I threw my keys at it. I think from these tests we can safely say that most surfaces, especially laminates or IKEA furniture, will hold paint better if you use a primer first and a top coat to finish it off. And then of course, just don't throw a metal jug at it. But how these surfaces would stand up over a long period of time, I'm not sure. So my advice would be, the more prep steps you can do, the better. So I really wanted to do one more quick test on the laminate and the IKEA lac table. And that was to see if sanding first, then primer, then paints, then top coats would make a difference. And here's how that little test went. I did about 5 minutes of sanding with my orbital sander. You could easily do this by hand instead. I wiped it clean, then went over the surface with white vinegar to help eliminate any oils that could be on the surface. You could also use rubbing alcohol or something similar. Once that was all dry, I added my primer, 2 coats of paint, and then the top coat, which I also added on top of the normal white paint this time, just to try it out. Now for the testing. I have to say, these surfaces definitely feel the most solid and durable. They hold up to the fingernail test and the Lego man test really well. And even with the key test, there were only some very tiny marks on both surfaces. So I'd say these definitely hold up to normal, everyday wear and tear, the best out of all the tests I've done. But of course, as always, the metal jug took some chunks out. So guys, I'm afraid with any painted surface, just handle with care. Overall, I think it's possible to paint these surfaces without sanding, and they will hold up better if you use a top coat. But if you want the paint to have the very best chance of sticking to your surface, I would definitely recommend that you sand it first, then use a primer, then 2 coats of paint, then a top coat. I don't think anyone wants to go to all the effort of painting something only to discover that the paint chips off really easily. So preparation really is key, and it really doesn't take too long. Now, of course, there are quite a lot of variables when it comes to an experiment like this. For example, different brands of paints or primers might work better or worse than others. So when in doubt, definitely get the advice of someone from your local hardware store, because they can help you with specific advice about specific products or the type of surface that you're planning on working with. If you've found a great product or method that you would like to share, I would love for you to leave it in the comments below and let me know your experience with painting different surfaces. I hope this video has been helpful and inspiring, and if nothing else, I hope it's been a distraction from all the bad news in the world right now. If you enjoyed this video, I would love for you to give it a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe to Hampton Your House and check out my other videos for more fun DIYs. Stay safe and healthy, and I'll see you again in my next video. Bye guys.